everyone, it's Natalie here. So for this week's reading, in response to everybody, I am going to show you the process. It's really, it is what it is. It's not the smoothest. It's not the smoothest video showing the process that I've ever done. I cannot tell you how many different times I had to reshoot this video. Forgive me if I'm repeating myself. I'm not working from home this week, and I have been working from home for the last few. So trying to get in and really edit videos in depth has not been as easy to do as it used to be. But that said, I'm going to switch the camera around and walk you through the process so that you can see how I start and how the whole thing goes and why it is that if I'm going to do a general reading for the public on a regular basis, I had been thinking I'll just go through that process before I ever get on camera. But if those of you really like it and find it worthwhile, I don't mind going through that process every week if everybody wants to see it. So let me know what you think. And yeah, I'll flip the camera around and show you how I actually go through that sequence. So it starts with the first operation, and from the first operation, then we do the general reading, which starts with the card counting. All right. All right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to look at my deck, and I'm going to select a significator. And there are any number of things that can go into what significator I choose and why. If people want me to go into a very deep discussion of how all of this works, I can definitely do that. Suffice it to say, for our reading today, I'm going to use the Fool as the significator. I might also use the High Priestess to indicate a woman. I could also use the Magician, who we've already passed, to indicate a man. I also like this particular Lover's card for someone who is non-binary. Here we are, there's us. This is the Fool. So, and actually if I were working with, and I ought to at some point for this particular spread, if I were working with the Numinous Tarot, I think I would probably, for this particular reading for everyone, as a general, I would probably pull the Lover's card, in fact, for that reading, because of the symbolism that is contained within it. So it just depends on the group, the deck, the individual. There's a lot of factors. But for our purposes, the Fool is probably the best significator. So after selecting and electing, I always say he's been elected, but we've elected the Fool. I'm going to shuffle the Fool back into the deck. And then I'm just going to go about shuffling the way I ordinarily would. This is such a hard deck to shuffle with a riffle because it's so tiny. There we go. Eek. Just do a third one and then go to overhand shuffling. Ooh. Thankfully, this is pretty sturdy cardstock. I've done a lot of shuffles and readings with this, and it's still in really good shape. So just throwing that out there, folks. If you're thinking about the Spirit Speak original deck, you won't be disappointed in the quality of the cards, because these have been lasting really, really well. So shuffling for the camera in front of it at the right angle is just kind of stinky. So I'm just coming over here. Okay, let's just say I feel like we're close. Like we're getting to the point where we're almost shuffled here. Reading for the highest good of the community today. Oops, to make it as an offering. Okay, so I'm going to say that this deck is now shuffled. And whether you use your right hand to separate and do the first operation is up to you. For practicality purposes today, I'm going to use my left hand. But it's not a requirement. You can use your right hand. The way that we separate the deck is very specific. And if people would like for me to go into greater depth about how and why the deck is separated the way it is, I can do that. Actually, now that I've said that, let's just do it. So for the first operation, I'm going to use my left hand and I'm going to make 4 piles with the deck, okay? So I'm going to move it over a little bit this way. I'm going to cut it first, and then cut it a second time. And finally, a third cut. And the 3 cuts give us 4 piles. There we go. So now we've got 4 piles. The first pile represents the wands. The second pile represents cups. Third pile represents swords, and the fourth pile represents pentacles. So you may wonder why Natalie, are you using these cheesy Post-its that don't represent anything? Sorry, just did a little camera check. You see what I mean? Every time I do this, it's like, oh no. Yeah, so why would I need to do this? Well, essentially, the answer to that, and I'm just chucking this out here as we're talking, each of these piles represents something specific, in addition to the 4 suits. So, in each of these piles, they're all represented by Hebrew letters that when they are lined up, now that they're all separated into 4 piles, we can say that if we're reading them from left or from right to left instead of left to right, we have Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, right? Hopefully you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so each of these represents wands, cups, swords, think 5s, and conflict. That'll come in again later, and pentacles. So these are the Hebrew letters that when put together like this, in theory, spell out the name of God, as I understand it. And they also then represent one of the suits. So again, wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. This is the way the deck would normally be split up if we're following the Golden Dawn system. And this operation, which is also called the first operation, comes from the Golden Dawn system. So that's also why this comes together the way it does. Okay. That said, I'm now going to go through all of these 4 piles and find out where our significator is within each of these piles. So not in the ones pile. Where the significator turns up tells us what the querent is going, what the reading is going to be about for that querent, what the major issue is that underpins the querent's reading. And wouldn't you know it, so the Fool, every time I've attempted this reading this week, the Fool has showed up in the 5 pile, in the V pile, which is actually the Vav. It is not a V pile, I just call it that. But it is the Swords pile. Okay, so when a card shows up in the 5 pile, the querent is there to talk about or ask about issues to do with politics, ambition, leadership, position in society, greater purpose of their lives and their livelihood, their life's work. It can also sometimes be conflict. It can be legal issues. And it's in theory one of the hardest piles to read. And it's also theoretically one of the piles in which we would least expect to find a querent's significator. However, what I have found in my own practice is that more often than not, I would say I've had a disproportionate number of querents whose card has showed up in this pile. And I should say too that when I was reading for myself, unsurprisingly, trying to figure out, do I start my career, as I start my career over again, does it include, a more spiritual path where work with tarot is concerned? Do I really want to be a death doula? Do I really want to work with dying people all the time? How do I make this work? What about my artwork? What am I contributing to the greater world? All of those things were coming up. So it was natural to me that this is also where my cards would show up, okay? What I find fascinating is that as I've been reading for folks, more often than not, it's been showing up in this pile. So whatever it is we're looking at as a collective community, it is best represented by the Swords pile. And so the solution to whatever comes up this week is going to be found in thinking. Okay? So if you want further information about this spread, including further information about the first operation and the general reading, it is from Paul Foster Case's work. But the way I have learned it has been through Holistic Tarot by Benebell Wen, and from her video from back in April that I linked to last week, and I'll link to again this week, that came from this book, right? And it's full of all sorts of good stuff. So, yeah. All right. So now that that's done, I'll get these out of the way and use them as bookmarks later. They're the same ones I've been playing with all week, so I'm just going to let a little bit more light through. I think that's better. It's an overcast afternoon here in St. Louis, so the lighting is not as bright as it normally would be at this time of day. All right, so now that I've got my little stack, can't remember what was on top of the stack. I'm going to say it was the Ace of Swords. Wherever I find the significator in the stack, as I'm sifting through, I take all of the cards that were on top and I immediately move them to the bottom of the pile. That is important in terms of how that works out, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is begin. I'm probably out of shot. Am I out of shot? I can't tell if I'm out of shot. Nope, I don't think so. I'm going to begin setting up a circle, and I could go into a further explanation about this, but I'm going to go to the left. And I have a lot of instinct as to why I'm doing that this week. It is also possible to go clockwise and not to go, I'm going anti-clockwise for this one. I'll probably want to arc these in. This process gets very fussy, and it's a little bit tedious. And when it comes down to the card counting, let me just say, making your circle and your layout of cards, it's really pretty important. I mean, I used to kind of undersell that a little bit as just, I'll make it look nice for when I take photos. But the truth of the matter is, and you'll see in a minute why, if you try to lay out a huge number of cards, and I mean, in one of these that I was doing last week, for whatever reason, the way the deck cut, it was so outrageously close to, let's see, I think we're good there. It was so outrageously close to being about 2/3 of the deck that I had a huge number of cards, and some of them got buried. So you want to make sure that you really are seeing all of your cards. So the spacing of them does matter. And the tidier they are, the easier it is to see which ones have been selected and come back to them, especially if you're working with a monochromatic deck like this. It's not really mono, it's just black and white. There's not a lot of cues to take visually that are helpful. Now, as I go to counting these, I've got a little piece of paper and a handy dandy pen, because if I don't write them down, it's possible I could lose track of what the order was, and that happens all too easily and all too quickly. So starting from my significator, this is going to be counted as 1. And the way that I'm working with this, I should also explain, each of the major arcana has a particular number assigned to it. The Fool is a 3, because the Fool is regarded as an element card, and in this particular system, there are 3 element cards, of which the Fool is 1. So I will count to 3, including the Fool. 1, 2, 3, and my first card jumps out, and that is the 9 of Cups. So I will tuck the Fool back in, and I will write down 9 of Cups. Okay, and then the 9 of Cups is simply a 9. It's already got its number. But it was 3, so I'm going to start with 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The Page of Pentacles. So pages, interestingly, are assigned the number 11. No, that's wrong. Pages are assigned the number 7. Aces are 11s. So I will count 7 from the following card. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. we have the Three of Cups. Okay, and then from here, 1, 2, 3, we are including the Fool. That should be, oh no, it won't be because, yeah, we're starting 1 here. So 1, 2, 3 gives us the 8 of Swords. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're back to the Page of Pentacles. Okay, so let me just double check. We started with the Fool, 1, 2, 3. Then from here we have 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Page of Pentacles. From the Page of Pentacles, we've got 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. From here we've got 3, 1, 2, 3. From here we've got 3, 1, 2, 3. And then from here we've got 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so just like last week, amazing, we have we have 8 cards. So the Three of Cups. Okay, I did not write down the Fool. Okay. So now I want to pull my cards out in the order in which they were drawn. So I start here with my 9 of Cups, Page of Pence, 3 of Cups, the Fool, and the 8 of Swords. These are now my cards that I will read. And the rest of the deck can all be put away. Okay, so now that you've got all 5 of your cards, or however many cards you pull from the card counting, you've then got the foundation of your reading. So what I tend to do is I tend to count the number of cards that are left. So in this case it's 5. Again, we had 5 last week as well. And I look at what kind of arrangement 5 makes. And 5 makes this kind of lovely arrangement where there's literally like a story arc that goes along, which I like. If I'm honest, I kind of like finding that. If I have 2 cards, if I've got an even number, you know, obviously 4, I just lay out the 4 cards together. But if it's more than 5, say like 6, then I start laying the 2 cards in the middle together at the top. And in that way, you know, that tells me something about the arc of the story that I'm about to create through the cards. So as I look at these 5, the things I'm looking for to begin with, well, first of all, it's the number 5. They came from a 5 pile, you know, or a V pile, that in my mind is associated with conflict, potentially, and swords. So do I have any swords here? I do. I do have swords. And frankly, you know, if I'm going into this already with the idea that whatever it is that the querent is here to learn about or understand is going to be resolved through thinking. The final card is to do with swords. And as we all know, the 8 of Swords is frequently associated with creating some kind of prison in the mind, right? A prison of thinking, a prison of thoughts, beliefs, ideas, things that don't serve the querent any longer. So already making those associations and seeing where, you know, where things are, how they line up, this tells me a great deal just as I sit and look at the cards. So from that place, I can then begin finding other associations, right? So things start off with cups, are right here with cups. We've got an interesting parallel here between the Fool and the Page of Pentacles, right? There's something about that that's very interesting. You know, the way that the two of them are balanced together here. Similarly, you know, it's interesting to me too. We're going to be working. I went ahead and just put it in the shot. I think it's in the shot. Heaven only knows if it's in the shot. Let me just scoot my camera forward, and now it is in the shot. See, see how I fixed that right away. So yeah, you know, the Amenti Oracle, which is about, you know, balancing heart and mind, and finding or weighing the heart against a feather, in order to make it light. Well, if we're starting here with cups that are full, but we get to this over here, which is about swords, something tells me that we've gone from having a lot of cups. This is so obvious. But, you know, we've gone from having a lot of cups, like life is magic. You know, we've got this sort of magical dove, you know, waving a wand, and there's, you know, this beautiful crystal ball that's full of love and hearts, and things are looking swell. And what happens when we're in that space? Well, you know, if that's love and it's not deep enough, it leads to fear, because then we have something to lose, right? We have something to lose at 9. At 10, we know that it's about to be lost and something new has to begin. There's a completion. But at 9, there's something to lose, right? Well, that's reflected again here. So when we close off and we don't fully accept what's here, what we have left here, you know, represents perhaps the fear of not, you know, the fear of not having enough, the fear of losing something, the fear of not being able to see further forward or further ahead. You know, it's all those sorts of things. So, without actually reading the whole spread, I'm going to leave it here and switch the camera around, and I'll draw from the Amenti Oracle, and we'll proceed with the entire reading. Okay, so now you know, like, why I didn't show all of the steps of, you know, how I get from point A to point B. But that said, let's pull an Amenti Oracle card, because I do like the intention moving forward of working from a place of compassion. That feels like a helpful way to view the week and the events. I think I will this week not work quite as hard at tying all of the cards necessarily back to the theme of the Amenti Oracle, but I will be including that as part of the filter. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So we're just going to shuffle it relatively well. And then I'm going to cut the cards. Interesting. So this week, our card is I Do Good. So I may go and get the book for this one, because there's a lot potentially to unpack in a statement like that. Yeah, in fact, I think I'm going to do that. Hang on, I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got the book, and I got to tell you, breaking this one down is going to be interesting, because of all of the cards that I've read in Jennifer Soldini's book, this one is probably one of the most esoterically complex, or maybe not esoteric, but it's philosophically complex. I'll start with this part. So when in speaking about I do good as a concept, here it is. She says, laughter, tears, and orgasm are all ecstatic releases in their own right, coordinates of consciousness rooted in the heart center. Happiness, as the effervescence within the heart space, is so special because when life shows us contrast, sense memories remind us that although what comes up must go down, it's hard to even read. It's really hard to even read. Let me try that sentence again. Happiness, as the effervescence within the heart space, is so special because when life shows us contrast, sense memories remind us that although what comes up must go down, melancholia's monotony can transform if we recall the power of a smile when things appear to go south. I think I've managed to make sense of that. Enough that it's audible and it makes sense. Okay. The nebulousness of emotion and how energy is conserved can present a challenge when attempting to do good in every effort, especially if you're looking to live in alignment with this particular ideal. The nebulous notion of good is often subjective, a construct of culture and imagination, and what truly defines something as the antithesis of bad can be theorized to be the energy behind an action. So in other words, in looking at I do good, what's the energy that you put behind your action, right? What kind of intention are you holding? Because that's the part that we can control. So there's a lot more to this that's in here. I don't feel like there's much more that I can break down and make super accessible in a video that's already long. In a reading that's already long. There is another really beautiful, I will read this part. As energy is something that cannot be created, but rather cultivated and transformed, we empower the invisible world by embodying heart-based emotions in our actions, reactions, choices, and connections. So that's a really helpful aspect to that. So as we look at, holding this heartfelt emotional center that informs our actions, let's look at what the cards say. So going into this next week, we've got a new moon, which is interesting because we've also got a new card coming, right? So we start off on Friday, perhaps, feeling... Hang on, let me lose this light. Here we go. So many factors that go into these things, aren't there? Okay, here we go. So, yeah, going into this week, starting with this 9 of Cups, things are full. Things feel magical. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of things that have been harvested throughout the week. So emotions may feel full. Things in life may feel full. And when that happens, as I pointed out in the earlier part of the video, sometimes it can lead us to a sense of fear that if we don't, do something to hold on to that, it will be taken away from us, So the upside or the downside of feeling really good about things is that sometimes then it brings up the fear of, oh no, what if things go south? What if they start to suck? But I don't see that happening because that's actually not part of what's coming up in this reading, right? So we can actually learn to enjoy the goodness that comes through. It's not just that we do good, but it's that things are good, right? All of our cups are full. We have everything we need moving forward. That said, the new moon seems to be bringing us a new energy, a new opportunity, a new possibility. So this new moon is a new moon in Libra, which might suggest that wherever that possibility is coming from could come from partnership. It could come from, interesting that Libra is the new moon and this was in the swords pile, right? Because Libra, Libra, air, swords, etc. The elements all match. But this Pentacles card, this page brings us news of something new that's hatching, that's on the horizon. So it could be more money. It could be another opportunity for earning money. It could be the gift of money. It's definitely something that's going to continue to fill our cups and make us feel very full. It could be news that an investment has done well. All sorts of possibilities there. It probably through partnership or through business. There could also potentially, because of that Libra, be a legal settlement that brings money. So that's always possible on a very general level when you're covering a lot of bases. The third point, the midpoint, is that, this is something to be celebrated. So we have two really good things that have come up. Things already feel really full. They feel really abundant, right? It's harvest time. So we're all kind of harvesting something. And there is that sense that comes about after the autumn equinox. When things are being harvested, we do feel good. We start to look at the year in retrospect and see the good in it that has come about. And there is a lot to celebrate. So I do see going forward that this week we will have those opportunities to celebrate with others, good fortune, good things, good harvest, etc. And this also leads to a new adventure, a new beginning. So something else is perhaps coming about as a result of this. And it comes from the Fool, which means that whatever it is, it has spiritual implications. So it isn't just emotional. It isn't just three-dimensional. There's something to do with our souls. And it also indicates to me, when I see the Fool come up, that significant events are beginning to line up. There are significant things that are going to lead to life changes for all of us. And lead us forward going into the future from a place that may feel very uncertain and very very hard to know for sure, because new things are very much that way. That's where we get to the final part of it, knowing that something new is opening up, that a new adventure is coming, that we're taking a big leap. There's not so much of a leap on this Fool, but we're taking a leap into some new territory that or some unfamiliar territory perhaps, and that can feel scary. So as we do that, we want to become aware of the ways in which we self-sabotage, right? We will all have a tendency to self-sabotage sometimes, but becoming aware of the beliefs and the ideas that we have, the fears of the good things being taken away from us, it takes the power away from them, right? Shine the light on it. Just look at it. It's probably not true, right? Whatever the fear is, it's probably not true. See if you can get some distance away from it enough to be able to look at things and go, okay, so, there's a fear about the beliefs, around this stuff moving forward. Is there any real foundation to that, or is it just a habit? Because when things are good, we often will start to freak out. It's very normal that we start to freak out and begin to find that there's something to defend, there's something to lose, right? Be a person with nothing to lose. The Fool really ultimately has nothing to lose, right? The Fool knows that there's nothing to lose, even if they don't make the leap, right? Even if they don't land on their feet, there's nothing to lose. So just remember, there's nothing to lose as you move forward. And maybe move forward from a place of being aware, instead of falling prey to whatever those older beliefs are, those fears are. Maybe move towards a place of being willing to see them and accept that they're there without necessarily believing them, right? And that brings us back then to our oracle card of I do good. So really look at what are the intentions that you're bringing this week to your actions. So if you know that you're moving forward, you're making a new start, you are good. Remember that you're good. We know that we're going to start with a lot of stuff in our cup, right? That there will be some kind of an opportunity coming up. that's new, that brings in money, something financial. There's an opportunity or a message of something that's coming that will increase our ability to have more abundance. So from abundance to yet more abundance in a different arena. The arena of cups is already very abundant. There's new abundance coming in from a different source. Celebrate it. Celebrating things is a really beautiful way to honor them. And we need that. We need more of that in our lives. And then, recognizing too, there may then be a big shift coming as well. That means moving in a different direction. And it can feel like starting from nothing or of having nothing, or lead us to a fear of, being willing to go into a place of seeing things through a beginner's mind can leave us feeling a little vulnerable, right? But remember, as you do that, to look at what those limiting beliefs really are. And instead of shying away from them or believing them, limiting thoughts, limiting beliefs, limiting ideas, things that, drinking the Kool-Aid without realizing that we're drunk, that we've ever taken a sip, right? Look at them. Don't reject them out of hand or be cruel. Just hold space and look. What is that? What is it like? Can you be curious? Can we be curious about those things without necessarily becoming embroiled by them or imprisoned by them? Okay. And then again, just coming back to that beautiful goodness. I will say this one thing, that helps underpin this card a little bit and make it a little bit clearer maybe, which is that we all have Buddha nature. We all have a core of who we are that is utterly good. It is utterly, utterly good. Trust that. We can trust that, but do your best maybe to trust that. And then use that trust, use that intention to underpin your actions and your way of interacting in the world. Okay. So that was a rather lengthy reading, but hopefully it'll send us off into our next week and into the new moon, from a place of feeling good and good, good about ourselves, good about the world, and about the things to come, because it looks like there's a lot of really good things to come. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And I offer you tremendous gratitude for your presence and your engagement. Bye.